Thank you. Hi, everyone. Happy to be speaking here. And my presentation might be a little bit unusual because I'm not talking about typical cyber threats, about malware. I'm talking about stuff that's also hacking, but not the machines, but more like minds of people, which is also very dangerous. And we see that it's more and more merging with the cyberspace, and more people in cyber are getting aware of this problem. That's why I'm speaking here, to kind of bring this angle to the conversation. Just a few words about myself. I'm CEO and co-founder of Osavul. Osavul is a company that was born as a response to Russian invasion to Ukraine 2 years ago, more or less. We started initially to work with the Ukrainian government to help the guys better understand how they're being attacked, with which vectors, with which tactics, and how to counter it better. And it emerged as a company that appears needed much more broadly than just in Ukraine. So now we work with guys in various countries, including the European Union, including the NATO guys, and the US, and many others. And we help basically be more effective and more resilient in this information security. And I'll be talking about the AI angle. Again, AI is a big word. You have a couple of lectures and presentations about the AI. But specifically, AI is interested in our field because there is one of the assumptions is that the AI will take 90% of content of the internet in 2026. We can doubt the number, but it's obviously the trend that we have more and more of AI-generated content. And that kind of sounds scary. So 90% of internet, almost everything we see is not organic. And when we say this, the first picture we have in mind is deepfakes. Deepfakes is an absolute champion in terms of hype. You see that over one day, there is 19,000 news stories about deepfakes. Everyone's talking about them. Journalists love them. And they even keep contributing to the scariness of the AI. And they limit our vision in a way to this because that's the loudest problem out there. And talking about the deepfakes, that's a very well-known one, very mimetic one, and not so good. So as you see, March 2022, one of the first deepfakes about the President Zelensky, an ugly, cheap fake, as it's called. No one will actually believe that that's a real thing. But then, in just 18 months, deepfakes evolved to something like this. And if I would play a video here, you would hardly realize it's a deepfake. From the image standpoint, from the voice standpoint, it took only 18 months to go from this to that. And you can try to project the trajectory, what's going to happen in the next 18 months, how would that look like? And there is no doubt that with the progress and the pace we have, it will look indistinguishable from reality, or almost indistinguishable. So we need to face this fact. It's out there, it's going to happen. But surprising fact about both of those videos, specifically the second one, is that both things were largely a failure. In both videos, Russians, they tried to imitate that president asks Ukrainians to surrender, but no one surrendered. There was no real effect whatsoever, even though it looked so powerful. And the conclusion is that it's very hard. In reality, it appears so, though it's counterintuitive, but it appears that it's hard to make huge impact with this one super fake. It's very easy to fact-check if Zelensky said that or not. It's super easy to fact-check if an explosion happened or didn't happen next to Pentagon in the DC. And so those fakes, they create a lot of hype and discussions because they're scary. But in reality, the impact is very limited, which was, by the way, proven by the OpenAI research and also Meta research and also our research that we did for NATO, that AI is kind of out there. We see these deepfakes, but the impact is very limited. But what about, and that's kind of the thinking I want to push you into during this presentation, what about change our perspective from thinking about these large, scary deepfakes into something much smaller, but at a scale of millions? And as we're going to see later, that's where very real risk exists, and it's already kind of happening and making a change. So talking about the AI content, first of all, to understand those 90%, where will they come from? There are different kinds. One is very obvious, is an assistant or co-pilot, as companies love to name it. So when I post something to LinkedIn, these days, everything I post was assisted this way or another with ChatGPT. So we can say that it's fair to say that this content is also AI generated. And many professional content creators and many hostile actors, of course, do this as well. AI enhances their capabilities and makes it look better, etc. But that's not that scary. That's really, we accepted it. We already live in there. Most of the people in the room, I think, use it, so we are fine. Then there is malign content. I think that's the type of the content that people in this room know well. It has to do with phishing attacks, with scams, with deepfakes, those stories when the company wired $25 million because of the fake CEO voice. So that falls into this bucket. You create something very targeted. It's a low volume, but it's very precise, and it hits the target, and it converts to a physical action. But then there are categories that are taking us more into this kind of anti-utopian type of thing. The first one is AI influencers. So it's different from the previous ones because here you do not even try to mimic a real human or extend it. You basically create an avatar that is a standalone thing. It just exists by itself. It tells its story, and it can create a content at scale. You can have these influencers at scale, and then you kind of pollute the information environment with something that looks like a human but is not. And it would be sounding like a distant future, maybe 2 years ago, but now it's something that actually happens more and more. You can call it bots or chatbots, but it's more and more getting into AI influencers because they're starting to get real influence, and they stop being passive, start being active and actively engage with the audience. And lastly, there is a use case which I'm scared the most of, which is AI for AI. And we're going to dig deeper there, but basically the idea is that we as humans might appear in a situation when we become passive consumers of the content that is created by machines and for machines, because the machines that create the content are generative AIs, like ChatGPT, like Midjourney and other stuff, while the consumers of the content are algorithmic feeds, like TikTok feed or Instagram Reels or even Google Search, which is AI-powered under the hood. And then if AI builds something for AI, and then there is a feedback loop, you appear in a pretty tricky situation where one machine can optimize against the other, and your engagement is just a currency that they are kind of trying to maximize. And those 90% of content might be very likely produced in this force scenario in a kind of autonomous way on an autopilot. Interesting fact is that nothing is this a future. So all 4 techniques, including the force, are actually and actively used in Russian influence operations that we monitor, not just in Ukraine, by the way, but globally, including the influence operations happening in the US in the context of the elections. And a lot of people, they put their attention to this box of malign content. Well, I think that we also should be very cautious about this box. Like all 4, of course, but this is obviously underrepresented in our assessment of the situation. Why so? Because we mostly look at the AI in this one axis of generation, generative AI. And then there is manual generation, and then there is AI generation. And we say, wow, it's so scary. You can produce such a deepfake. You could have produced such a fake before, right? 10, 20 years ago, but you need to put a lot of manual efforts. Now it's automated, so it's much scarier, though the quality is kind of, at the end of the day, similar. But the second axis that we sometimes don't notice is the axis of distribution. So no one actually cares about this deepfake if no one sees it, right? And the big challenge is how to make it seeable and how to make it seeable in a credible way. Because if it's posted by a no-name bot somewhere out there, no one really cares and no one trusts it. And the distribution is the holy grail of this whole influence operation propaganda machine, how to make these things, produce them at scale, and then how to distribute them. And we have a good answer, and this answer is algorithmic feeds that we have on all the major platforms. So wherever you go, be it TikTok or Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts or any other, or Twitter feed, you would have some sort of AI optimizing things to make them more interesting for you. And that's not a new thing. It's been out there for quite some time. But when you have 2 combined, that's where the explosion happens, and that's where you arrive to what we call content factories, which basically can both produce, distribute content, learn on this, do it at scale, iterate, and become more and more efficient over time. Talking about the goals of the adversaries, what AI actually brings you is scalability. That's number one thing. It's not equality. Again, even though deepfakes are so good, we need to understand that they are good for the AI. They are not good for a professional video producer sitting and who can create you anything. So the real advantage that you have is the price and the scalability. And that's exactly where it's being used. So you use it in the cases where you need to reach huge audiences, when you need to produce millions of copies of something, and you want to disseminate it in a cheap way. Importantly, this last point is reach of polarized audiences. That's also important because in many cases when you want to have huge reach, you don't want to reach every single individual in a population. Again, if we're taking Ukraine, for example, you don't want to communicate to people who are patriots of Ukraine and who believe in Ukrainian victory. It's worthless activity. You won't gain anything. You want to achieve and you want to reach those polarized audiences. You want to win the minds of people who are already halfway there, who are already in this kind of gray zone. And there are many polarized audiences that are there and you can reach. And you can also use these tools to actually polarize people, so to prepare them and then reach them once they are already polarized. And what it means practically. And most of the screenshots that you're going to see here, they are real screenshots from the real things that we are able to identify. So number one is automated content production to attract audience. What it means? We can say it's a deepfake. So what we see on the right-hand side, it's a very kind of low-quality piece of content. It's an anecdote, like generated by ChatGPT as a text. Then Midjourney created a couple of images. And it tells a story about a cowboy who enters a bar. And it's not funny, by the way, and I think no one laughs by watching it. However, it was fully produced by the generative models, 3 of them, right? The text one to write the script, then the voice one to say it out loud, and then the video to create an images. And it would be not a problem, but you see it got 684 likes, meaning that some real people actually kind of fell into that and they liked it. And it led to the fact that this account that created it, it got the real engagement. And so the next video it posts, it will get even more reach, and it will be working like this to some point. And interestingly, this content is not about politics, which means that fact checkers, all the deepfake detectors, all the efforts of our defenders community is not focused here. We don't care. And we don't care until a certain point of time. So this image is a screenshot from Facebook, and it's a mega popular trend on Facebook now. So what is being done is that fake photos like these are created, depicting Ukrainian soldiers in very different contexts. This is like trying to play with the racism in the text, but some different ones are not even playing with anything. They're very loyal to Ukrainian army. They're trying to praise the heroes. They are very likable, though. And people, like tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people, engage with this type of content. And the content doesn't look hostile at all. But what happens after that is that the threat actors, they build huge audiences and they build huge data sets of what works. And then on top of that audiences, every once in a while, they send really malicious content. And it would be in the ratio of 1 to 100 maybe. And in order to make this malicious content work and actually reach the audience, you need to build up the audience first. And the Gen AI does it perfectly for you. You can scale this thing, you can really pollute half of the Facebook with it, and no one will go for you because you don't do anything kind of malicious. So why should we take down this account? It didn't say anything wrong. It's not a fake news, it's not disinformation, it's not propaganda, it doesn't violate any terms of use of Facebook. And this way, threat actors are sitting in the shadow for a long period of time, and they have this build-up phase when they build up the infrastructure that's going to be later used to do what they want to do, to deliver the message. And importantly, when they actually deliver this message, it can be not a deepfake. It can be whatever. It can be a real piece of content. It can be fabricated by a human team, because you need it just once, or you need it a couple of times. You don't care about the scale there that much. But when you're creating this background noise, scale is exactly what matters. You need a lot of pieces of content, and you need to experiment a lot. And that's where AI comes super helpful. Another example of the same technique is the network of websites created specifically for the US. So this one might look legit, but the text that we see here is GPT-written nonsense. I mean, it's not a nonsense exactly. So what they did, they took Wikipedia, they scrapped a couple of hundred of thousands of different persons from Wikipedia, and they just rewrote their biographies. And that's the background content that they have. On top, they added news that they took from trustworthy sources. On top of that, they added propaganda from Russia Today. And it's a blend of 3 content types on these websites. And it's fully automated, so the website was just created, the admin panel was connected to it, and then on autopilot it was populated with content. And I can't say that it's the top 1 website in the world, but it's a network of at least 13 websites and 130 Telegram channels, and they generate 50K visits per month. We can judge 50K per month, is it a lot or not so much, but we need to take into account that that's the beginning of this era of those content machines, and this was achieved with no or almost no human interference. So you lay out those domain names, you connect everything, and then it plays automatically. And it can be not a 13 websites, it can easily be 100, maybe 1,000. Specifically with the news, it's even scarier, because the trend that's happening now in the US is that local newspapers are kind of dying, because it's hard to make money with such a small market on the community level. But for Russian guys, it's a huge opportunity. You fill in the gap. There is a lack of local information. You create these types of things on domains from different states or even from different counties, and you win those people. And then you can deliver messages that you want to those people. Another technique is bots, but bots reinvented, or we call them bots 2.0, which provide you a massive scalability, authenticity, and they can talk to each other, which is super important, which makes it a dynamic kind of conversation management. They can do a lot of things. Again, real examples from Twitter that we know about because AI failed here. So you see in the text, as an AI language model, I cannot do this, or I cannot do that. So AI rejected to fulfill the prompt that happened there. But the reality is that these failures only happen in less than 10% of the times. So you can be sure that 9 other instances were successful and were delivered. And so AI can look up information online, so your comment that you brief your model for can now be contextualized and real time. It can use a given point of view. So here it says, as an AI language model, I do not have a nationality or ability to speak as I were from a specific country. So now trying to target Latvian population, the bot can think like Latvian and try to use words, ideas, common opinions from this target group. It can obviously adjust the writing style to mimic for the conversations that's out there. And you see those failures, they're very different. Sometimes it doesn't say, I cannot do this. Sometimes it just gives a different clue to understand that that's AI generated. And if you see content like this in the internet, it means that it's an autopilot approach. So no one proofread it, no one validated before sending it out. It was basically a command and control center that automatically posts it on Twitter. So everything happens without human interference. And the scale of this thing is massive. So it's really hard to assess. No one can assess it fully. But we're talking about hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of content units. Another use case, which is it seems smaller, but it's major, is auto-translation. Again, when we're talking about the hostile actors, we usually mean Russian, Iran, and Chinese influence. And the language barrier is one of the factors. So you can't know every single language in the world, and they live in sort of their own language spaces. But large language models, they are evolving and they're changing the game. So on the left-hand side, you see the Russian Pravda network, a network of the websites that distribute disinformation. And in 2023, it looked like that. In 2024, it's much bigger. And look which countries were added. So it's mostly countries with their own languages and what's called low resource languages, languages which are harder for AI to use. We have all the Balkans, we have Baltic countries, Nordics, Central Eastern Europe. And again, if you can translate, you can reach those distant audiences that were unreachable before. Another example of Russian network, you can see in the suffix that so many countries are covered and there are more to be added here. When it all is put together, one of the most common use cases is when those infrastructures used to amplify state-owned or state-affiliated media and push their narratives to broader audiences and to kind of make them look more legit. One of the very typical examples is when Maria Zakharova says something and then she's not a credible source for Western audiences, right? Because she's obviously state-affiliated. So then, like Russia Today takes it, again, not such a credible source. But then someone who is affiliated with Russians but doesn't look like a direct affiliate, like Scott Twitter, for instance, who is an American but who is actively involved in Russian influence operations. Now he takes this message and he rewords it. And now from Scott Twitter, a bunch of AI-controlled accounts, they take it and they take it all over the place and making it look like everyone shares this idea or this idea is genuinely popular. So the bottom line is that the AI approach in influence operations is scalability over quality. So the threat actors, they don't aim to create this one silver bullet. They create tons of low-quality content, which at scale can drive a change and can build an infrastructure that's further used to deliver what you want to deliver. And so if we are to be afraid of, the picture on the left side might be even more scary than the picture on the right side. What can we do about it? And can AI help us in this process? So first of all, luckily, so far, sometimes they are dumb, our opponents. So as an AI language model, it was even a meme. Twitter was polluted with these types of errors some time ago. And we learn on their failures, but the problem is that they also learn. So as you see, it's decreasing, and this error is less and less common. We need to keep finding new ones, and we need to learn and keep learning. How we detect if something is adversarial and is using AI? There are a couple of ways. I'll be quick to have time to cover all of them. But basically, AI content detectors, many have hope that this thing works. You just send there a text or an image, and it gives you an answer. Then you can analyze the source. And instead of analyzing one piece of content, you can analyze multiple pieces of content from the same source. And then you have more signals, because on top of just the text, you can understand the behavior, and you can understand if the behavior is seemingly organic or not organic. And then finally, you can also understand groups of accounts. And what you don't see in one account, you can see in a group, that as a group, 100, 1,000, they display a common pattern that discloses that they are actually not authentic. And the bottom line is that AI content detectors, they largely fail, especially for texts. And generally speaking, not a good idea. Like if you rely on AI content detectors, you would fail in a large portion of cases, maybe 30 to 40% of cases. They sometimes give you the answer, but if they tell you it's not AI generated, it doesn't say anything. It still can be. And the more you go to the right, the more confident you can be that you have a solid tool in place to identify the hostile activity. And then what can we do in the response? So we can act on the content level, and that's the traditional approach, where the fact-checking happens, debunking, narrative analysis. So you take a piece of content and you try to respond. Someone said it's a fake, someone posts a fake, you say it was a fake, and you directly respond. It's relatively simple. You can employ many people to do it. You can have a large network of fact-checkers involved. The problem is that it's always reactive. You're always one step behind. And another problem is that it gives an asymmetric advantage to your adversary. Because you are behind, they can always come up with something new, and you'll be always lagging. And it's relatively easier for them to create a new type of fake than for you to be able to have a detection in place that can spot anything. So you're always kind of lagging. And there is another one which is an infrastructure level thing. In this case, you don't select pieces of content one by one, but you try to understand which infra is used to distribute it. And then if you spot the assets that are used, you try to take them down. And if you do that, you basically compromise the resources invested in build-up of the infrastructure, because it's not a quick process. And then the more infrastructure you take down, the more they need to start over again and again. And then they can have a lot of content, individual pieces of content from the left block, but they won't have a way to kind of put it out to the world. And that's why it gives us this hope, because it gives us an asymmetric advantage. It's relatively simple to take something down, while to build it up takes time and money. So super quickly to sum up, we can proactively detect what's going on, and we can respond to it by facilitating this knowledge about infrastructure so that then people who have the mandate, like governments and platforms, can take it down. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. The more to the end, the more questions actually came in. So thank you, the audience. Maybe somebody wants to raise a hand and say back at home, I spoke in a microphone today. No, not today. Well, hold me for me this. I mean, actually, that's yours.
Okay, thank you.
If you can answer 4 questions. All right, so let's start with this one. Can you elaborate on copilots designed to influence or even brainwash their users? Have there been any such case?
I think what was meant there is like, can the AI model itself brainwash people, right? When you interact, let's say, with ChatGPT, can that influence your mind? So if that's the question, it's very interesting, innovative technique, which is proven to work. So we are not sure if it's actually being used by, let's say, Russians, because it's a one-to-one communication that makes it super difficult to spot, right? We don't have visibility into what's being discussed with chats. But there was a study recently that basically tested if you are talking to a bot and you know that you're talking to a bot and it tries to convince you, do you get convinced? And the answer is yes, you get convinced with a statistically significant result, meaning that these machines can, and I think will, convince large groups of people, so totally possible.
All right, so next question. Do you think the source of the deepfake can have the most impact, even if the content might not be believable? So what about utilizing deepfakes together with systems intrusion and planting the evidence? Oh, sounds like a script for a movie.
Yeah, like the effectiveness, it depends on many factors, right? So it depends, first of all, on your biases. So if you're generally biased towards what deepfake says, you are much more likely to fall into it. It depends on the emotional state which you are at when you interact with it, time of the day when you see it, and so on and so forth. So generally, can deepfake be effective in convincing something? Totally yes. How do you deliver it in a way, in a scalable way, that it works in most of the cases? I think that's the big problem, and that's the holy grail. How to make, again, to make it a one-time thing, to convince one CEO or one employee to fall into one particular scam, that's one thing. But when we are talking about influence operations, you want to impact large groups of people simultaneously, and that's a different thing. And there, the biggest problem is how to deliver this deepfake in a credible environment, in a credible way.
We have 2 similar questions about AI-generated content, which is based on other AI-generated content. So the opinion here is that it's degrading in quality very fast, and that can lead to a disaster content-wise. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's a good point. Like futurists say about this a lot. That's not far from truth, because what the model producers do, right? They are greedy for data, so they take more and more, and it appears that there is this feedback loop. So you put this content out there, and then you take it and you train on it. Can lead, so you said it can degrade the whole quality, it can be there, so we can find ourselves in this infinite loop of the descent of the quality. I know that the model providers, they try to fix this problem. For instance, they have detectors of the content created by their own model. So at least they can exclude it from training, and that's one of the ways to mitigate it.
I actually just used AI.
Okay.
Because looking at my script, seeing your name, which is Ukrainian version of Greek name, Dmytro, and looking at the script, the next speaker is Dimitris. So basically relative to your name. With this, we conclude your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.